There are industry terms that we all hear, but sometimes we don't understand the significance or the details that come to light when they're needed. Here are some words just like that: licensed, bonded, insured. No doubt everyone watching today's program today advertises that they are licensed, bonded, and insured. But do they really understand what that means? To dig into this topic, I'm pleased to welcome Alexander Ruggie, or Al, as known to his friends. He's the Marketing and Business Development Director for ASAP Restoration in Arizona and a frequent columnist for Clean Facts. And I thank him for that. Welcome, Al.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here. Good to see you again.
You wrote an article recently about the lure of liability, and you focused on these three things I just mentioned: licensed, bonded, and insured. Great article. So I'll put the link in the video description for those watching this program. They can read the article. But I just thought it's important to talk about this too, because there's some misunderstandings about these three terms.
Yeah.
What are those? Can you dig into that just a bit for us, Al?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that from a consumer standpoint, the whole, I mean, we've all driven past a truck and seen, licensed, bonded, insured, and just figured, that's what everyone does. So it must be something that all contractors do, type of thing. Um, I think that that's probably a safe assumption for your general big players in the game. You're going to have people who are licensed, bonded, and insured. But in terms of what those words actually mean for the consumer, or even for the contractors themselves, I think that there's definitely some confusion for sure. So I would say you want to unpack it. Bonded is probably the easiest, I would say, because essentially the homeowner or the consumer doesn't really necessarily need to know the extent of the bond as much as the contractor themselves do. So the bond is what would be protecting the contractor essentially if something were to go wrong on site. So, like they are doing work for drywall and they accidentally pop a pipe and now the whole house is flooded. This protects the homeowner and the contractor in that situation. The problem with the bond is that the contractor really does need to pay it back. So that's one of the differences between insurance and bonding is they're both sort of to protect the homeowner and the contractor, but in different kinds of ways. They're both essentially financial products that take care of different aspects of different parts of being a contractor or for homeowners for being a homeowner. So with the insurance side of things, you can have different levels of insurance, and that would protect the contractor and the homeowner in the situation that your roofer falls off the roof and breaks his leg type of thing. So it's going to protect both of those parties in that event. I think licensing is probably the most complicated one because there's really so many different forms of what people mean when they say that they're licensed and what contractors mean when they say they're licensed. And it can mean a variety of things. So you can have a business license, which allows you to pay taxes, essentially. And you can have a license for being a contractor, which would allow you to do specific kinds of work. So plumbers have different, essentially, licenses than electricians do. And then I think that the confusion that most consumers probably don't even realize is there is sort of the difference between all those. So, just because you have a business license doesn't mean that you're necessarily licensed to be a contractor. So
Do you see most companies are adequately covered with all three?
that's a good question. I would say that when it comes down to the majority of home projects that consumers are looking to get solved, there are contractors that do have sufficient licensing and bonding and insurance, and then there are those that don't. For the kind of work that we do in restoration business, we encounter a bunch of people who know what all those terms are and they have the proper coverage and then the proper bonding and proper licensing. Then there are some that don't, and they try to sort of work under the radar. I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing for the contractor. It's definitely not a good thing for the consumer, and it causes problems down the road sometimes. So
Let's talk about the legal requirements. Now, I imagine federal government doesn't get involved in this. I don't know. Maybe they do. States do. Every
yeah,
state.
yeah.
What do we need to know about that?
Actually, there are apparently bonds specifically for working for the federal government. I have encountered a couple of them. You need like at least $150,000 bond for certain projects type of thing. So for state, each state is going to be different. There are going to be different requirements for every state. I know that for Arizona, there are requirements for bonding and insurance, but not necessarily for licensing. You can do certain things without a contractor's license. And homeowners can do pretty much anything, and they don't need bonding or licensing for their own work. So there are lots of confusion around those terms when it comes to the differences between what a contractor can do and can't do. And there are even differences within those terms themselves. So every state has different requirements for the amount that a contractor needs to have in retainer, essentially. So what your bond amount is and the amount that you need to have for in case something happens, and different amounts for liability or for workers' comp. So every state is a little bit different, and each contractor should probably look at what the state requirements are. And sometimes even different municipalities within a state will have additional requirements, so it can get complicated.
Yeah, I guess we didn't even bring up workman's comp, but that's a whole nother topic. So,
Yep. One
okay,
more thing that restoration workers have to contend with.
there's so much, isn't there?
Yep, it's a nearly endless list.
Yeah. So in your experience in the industry, any worst case scenarios you have heard about or maybe experienced because of not having sufficient coverage in any of these?
There was a situation that my employer was telling me about. Josh was describing a situation where we hired a subcontractor who claimed that they were sufficiently bonded, and turns out that they were not. And then we ultimately ended up getting stuck with, I forget exactly what the scenario was. It wasn't a burst pipe or something like that, but they did something wrong. They were not, or they were held liable, but they didn't have the ability to pay for it, essentially. And so we, as the general contractor, ended up having to foot the bill for it. So that can happen, and that's one of the things that contractors should absolutely look out for. If you're hiring a subcontractor, make sure that they are properly licensed, bonded, insured to the level of the work that you're doing. That's another thing that people don't recognize, is that the amount that you have to be licensed or excuse me, insured or bonded for specific projects. So a general contractor usually does have a much higher insurance or bonding than somebody who would be essentially a handyman, because they take on bigger projects, because they're responsible for the electrician and the plumber and everybody else who's on the job site, not just one little project.
So that scenario you shared is not good, but also there are many worse, I'm sure, out there. I've heard of businesses having to close up shop because of some issue that's happened to them. So, but that's other people.
Yeah, fortunately, that hasn't happened to us, and we don't put ourselves in the situation where that really could happen to us. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that that's just a matter of doing good business. Right?
good. I guess I want to ask this question because I see everyone advertising their license, bonded, and insured. It's everywhere, every industry, every van, it seems, or advertisement website. Is that really a good marketing tool? You're a marketing guy. Talk about that.
Yeah, I would say that it absolutely is, as long as you're legitimately within those licenses, bonds, and insurance policies. I have had customers specifically reach out to us because they have gone and researched all of those things, and they recognize that we are what we say we are. And so, from my perspective in marketing, it's absolutely a positive thing, and it can absolutely get you more business. Uh, I think that the customer that would have absolutely gone with somebody else if they didn't find that we were properly credentialed. So from my perspective, it's a boon.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I was thinking everyone says it, but your smart customers will make sure that,
I'll go look. Yeah,
yeah, they'll
for
check you
sure.
out. All right.
Yeah, I mean, and then that'd be another thing. So if you're not, then they might use you, right? And then have something go wrong with the project, and then you're held liable for it, and then they attack you because they know that you aren't. And so they'll either get free work done, or you decide to, go to court with them. It can get messy.
I guess I guess you could either avoid those customers or just get the proper license
It's
bonding
easier to just get the
insurance.
proper licensing bonding. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Al, any final words of advice you'd like to share?
For consumers, there's usually some equivalent of, so in Arizona, we have a registrar of contractors. And all contractors who do work above a certain level have to essentially register and prove that they are bonding and licensing in accordance with the type of work that they're doing. So it depends on what state you're in, but I would check to see if your state or municipality has that type of registrar and make sure that whatever company you're thinking of working with is properly credentialed. For restorers or contractors in general, I think that it is much easier to be licensed, bonded, and insured for the type of work that you're doing. And the amount that you could potentially gain from doing work outside of it isn't anywhere near as profitable as the amount that you could potentially have to pay or what could go wrong if you don't. So better idea to get it done.
And with that, we'll end our episode. Thank you, Al, for your time today. And I'm sensing future episodes we'll do together.
Sounds fun, Jeff. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you.